Thanks again for taking some time to join us for December's Learning Lab. For those I'm meeting for the first time, thanks again for joining. My name is VJ, and I help run a lot of our customer education and training here. Before I break down the agenda and our lovely co-host, a couple housekeeping items. Number one, we're recording this for you all and for any customers that couldn't make it today, so we'll be sure to send this back as a reference point. And then second thing, we like to make these learning labs more meeting-like, more conversational. So please, as you have questions today, you're curious about a certain feature or function, we want to make this more interactive. So please share questions, comments, curiosity throughout the meeting today. So as far as breaking down the agenda, it's pretty straightforward. It's going to be kind of twofold. Number one, I'm going to take the looking back and kind of do a recap of some of our features that we released in 2025. And then I'm really excited to introduce Katie Knott, our SVP of Client Experience, and she'll be talking about moving forward and give you all kind of a sneak peek into 2026 and what our team's got cooking for next year.
All right, I'm excited to be here. Nice to meet everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, Katie. So as far as looking back goes, I kind of want to take this and break it down into two different topics and subjects, starting first with design enhancements in 2025. So when we kind of started out in 2025, our product and dev team wanted to take a look at a lot of modern websites, and we wanted to give our clients the ability to do what cool looking websites can do and be able to give you all that design ability on slides directly without having to know code or have a sophisticated design background. So that was our intent in 2025, was to try to provide you all an array of design elements and components that could spice up your content and really get you into some of the modern look and feel. Starting first with what we call the number counter component, you typically see this on slides that have data, statistics, infographics, things like that. So really awesome component when you want to call out a particular number on a slide or it's a focal point of a slide. And the good news is with this number counter component, whether you want to fit it into an existing slide or create it on a new slide, fairly intuitive to get it added to your content. So here you can see this was an existing slide that just had a normal number, a solid number, and very easy to just remove what you would normally have as a text box in here and put the number counter instead to kind of give it more of that dynamic feel. So I just want to kind of show you a couple examples of how a number counter is being used in action. And again, pretty intuitive if you have quite a few existing slides where you have numbers on there to just remove the existing text box, replace with the number counter itself. And then do know on the right-hand side, like for most of our components, you'll have tons of setting options in terms of the delay, the gap, the speed, all those pieces. So just do know you'll have some additional custom options beyond determining the actual figure that's going on the slide. So that was our first one we wanted to call out, number counter. It's, again, really useful for data, stats, demographic, things like that.
I have
Baylor,
a quick question.
please.
So are you able to do something similar with bar graphs? I know like we had some slides that you guys created for us with bar graphs, but they were manually made. And so the animations were set in there manually. And then when we had to redo them because we updated numbers, we just used the graph feature because that was just easier. But it doesn't, is that animation there and I'm just missing it, or is that something that is added or can be added?
Good question. So what you'll want to do, and I had to take a look at your slide, Baylor, but I'm guessing if you have like a bar chart and those rectangles are animating in, it's possible that that rectangle might wait 1 second before the animation starts. So that's where you would also use this count delay right here to time it up with that bar chart animation. So they're kind of animating at the same time, or the delays are synced up, if that makes sense. And we can take a look at your slide, but that would be the way
right now.
Yep.
Right now, the bar chart, it doesn't have any because I use the bar chart component. It doesn't have the animation, but love to
I see.
figure out, because when they originally made each like rectangle in the bar was its own separate component.
Gotcha. I'll connect with you after. There are solutions kind of depending on what you prefer. Um, but in any event, I'm confident we can get that synced up with the bar chart. Great
Thank
question.
you.
Yeah, so that again is the number counter component. Terry, thanks for your question here. What is a number counter linked to so the data is live? Um, this number counter is not linked to any particular data source. So you're gonna that this is a manual input of that particular number in data. And then in essence, what our system is doing is we're um, animating that number for you. So you're setting the starting number and the final number, and then we'll add in the number counter effect automatically with it. So it's not pulling from a particular data source. Great questions. Any others on number counter?
VJ, since we do have some clients who do have live data, right? Given some of the
Yeah,
merge tags they're able to add onto the slides. If they have a field that has something that is live data, would the same effect be able to be applied to it?
good question. So yes, we would be able to, from a data source, be able to apply this certain effect, but natively when you come in here without any sort of connectivity,
Yeah.
that's not allowed right off the bat.
That makes sense.
Great question. Second component we want to showcase is called the image carousel. You typically see this, the most common use case for this is on websites where they want to showcase the logos of the clients that they work with, the partners that they work with, product photography, photography of certain spaces. So many different use cases for image carousel. And again, in this kind of show and tell manner, what I want to showcase here is one of our golf event customers where they're using image carousel to showcase photography of their event. But what I really like about how this is used, it's only using just a little small sliver of this slide, using barely any real estate, but it allows for them to showcase a ton of photography in addition to the other content on the 75% of the right-hand side of the slide. So really useful way to showcase a ton of photography without having to take up a ton of space. But then also for some of our sports customers for selling particular assets like an LED, it can be used in this sort of manner where you can dynamically have, in this case, a logo scroll through an existing image. Now you might be wondering, VJ, this looks really cool, but I imagine this is pretty hard to build. It's pretty straightforward in reality. So if I take a look at the slide here together, this is starting off as just a simple background image. And then all I've done here is I've added the image carousel on top using the layering of our slides. And then I just added the logo of the prospect or client. So that's automatically scrolling in that particular space. Do you know if you are layering or kind of doing something similar? You can add background colors behind that photo. So for example, here, if I didn't have a good way to kind of cut this LED out, that's where I can use some of our native styling options to slap a background color behind here. Questions on image carousel use cases or general thoughts?
So that's not
Bailey?
integrated into the hotspot. Are they planning to integrate it in the
Good
hotspot?
Good question. So right now, this is not automated like the hotspot component is. I know our teams talked about trying to develop a similar type of automation, but currently today you'd have to create these for each opportunity. Last design component I want to showcase here for today is called scrolling text. So I think this slide example I have pulled up is a really good way to kind of think about it, where it's giving you sort of a ticker-like way to showcase text copy. So what you're seeing here is that you can have alternating lines of text, right? It doesn't have to be one sentence or one word or one subject. In this case, you can see what we did for this slide is we're having alternate lines of headlines. And then here I can determine the speed and gap depending on the content within. Another example here, kind of in a similar vein, right? Exact same type of use case I just demonstrated, but in this case, instead of having imagery scroll through a confined space, I can have text, right? There may be often or maybe times where you'd rather have text be scrolling in that asset rather than a logo. So exact same type of use case, but instead I'm using scrolling text versus image carousel. So I will pause and check in. We've covered 3 design components: number counter, image carousel, scrolling text. Before moving on, any questions with those pieces? Shifting gears a little bit, but still on the topic of design enhancements, we also rolled out slide transitions and exit animations. So as you are, or as a recipient is moving from slide to slide, there's now an ability to have the slide transition, whether it's a fade or a other type of effect. And then also, in addition to being able to animate a component when it enters the slide, in 2025, we added the ability for customers to have a component exit when you move from slide to slide. So this will help with your storytelling. This will help make your presentation seem a little more linear, but it also reinforces to your clients that they're looking at an active, live, web-based presentation. For slide transitions and exit animations, this is a setting you have to turn on for your master deck library. So for those that don't have these options, please contact your CSM and we can get these pieces turned on for your organization. That completes the design enhancements and kind of reviewing that particular subject and topic. What I want to move into next are our platform enhancements and what we did in 2025 to improve our general product, software, and platform. Starting first with the side panel. This is probably our biggest deployment from last year from a UI UX perspective. And that is now just giving our customers the ability to make edits faster and more efficient. So in the past, when you needed to edit a piece of content, we forced you to either click settings at the top or have to go back to edit to make changes. Whereas now what we've done is we've added panels on both the left and right of your editor to make it a little bit more smooth, to add content, to edit content, to remove, to make adjustments to your slide. So one of our biggest changes to our UI UX was both the editing panel on the left and right, giving customers the ability to, again, manipulate content faster, decrease the number of steps and clicks to create your slides. What we also added from a kind of a UI UX perspective, it's the small things, but it was a big one. The ability to copy and paste content from one slide to another. So let's say, for example, this particular slide, I wanted to grab maybe just the bottom third. So what we now have the ability to do using your hotkeys being Control C, Command C, Control V, Command V, is I can now copy components or all of the components and then paste them over into a slide. So copy and paste is now a function. What I also want to call out, especially if you're looking to grab multiple components of a slide, is into the layering panel. This is more of a best practice. Here's where you can multi-select quite a few components. And again, same workflow, do a copy and paste of multiple components from your layering panel. Last thing I want to call out from a platform edition is the ability to share your presentations. We've always given clients the ability to share via link and via PDF. And then this past year, we added a third ability, and that is to be able to share via QR code. So when you go to generate a link, next to your link is this QR code generator right here that now allows a third way to make your third distribution route for your Digideck presentations. With the QR code, do know, just one last thing while I have the screen, is you can customize this if you want to include your logo, partner logos, background colors, all that can be customized as well. There was one last one. I won't do a kind of a show and tell on it, but we did release a slideshow component. This slideshow component here is really useful for auto-playing presentations. So if you're at a trade show, event, and you want the presentation to autoplay, we did release a slideshow component for that exact situation and scenario. So those were our top 4 platform enhancements we wanted to call out from the past year. Before I kick it over to Katie to talk about next year, what we have cooking for our clients, any questions or anything I can go back and review from 2025? All right, Katie, I think people want to hear from you. Let's have you take it away.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. As VJ said, my name is Katie, and I actually recently joined the Sports Digita team here back in late summer. I'm coming from a background in the software space. I've also sort of been in your shoes. A lot of the roles I have held over the years have really been focused on how to tell dynamic stories using visual presentation type software. So I've used a lot of it. And so I was really, really keen to join the organization and to bring in sort of that voice of you guys, right? I've been in your shoes and I am passionate about visual design. And so a lot of what you're going to see here is how we are going to prioritize things that we have been hearing from you guys for so long. We really did a ton of deep analysis to look at what it is that comes up as we look at feature requests and function requests, as well as just how to simply make your life a little bit easier. So VJ, if you want to move into the next slide, I'll give them kind of the 10,000-foot view before I look at any one of them individually. So know that a lot of this, when I'm sharing this roadmap, it is all work that is planned to be released in 2026. There's a variety of timelines associated with it, so I won't necessarily get down to here's the day, but know that a majority of this is near term. So we're looking first half of the year, you're going to start to see some of these enhancements being released. The big pieces and priorities I want you guys to see are the 4 components you're seeing on the screen. What we hear time and time again is that people desire to move more and more content into Digideck because they really like the output. They love the analytics on the back end, but historically it's been quite a burden to move content in, right? It's a little bit different to use than maybe the software that you're used to, or it's already built in another format. And so it can be a challenge just to get it moved in. And so I think people have prioritized maybe a use case or 2. Instead, what we're hoping to do is help you guys build faster, meaning what are the ways that we can mass get content moved into Digideck so you can either expand to new departments, new use cases, or keep your content as current as possible. So speed, huge element going into 2026. The next one, I know VJ covered a few of these pieces, but in truth, we recognize that so many of you are coming out of products that have been around for a very long time. So we kind of get used to how certain things operate, no different than when we get used to how we use our phone in when we're a Samsung product, as opposed to when we switch to Apple and we're suddenly very confused. We know they do a lot of amazing things, but it can be hard for us to capture that. So some of the things we're looking at doing is simply looking at our UI, make sure that the experience you're going through is intuitive, make sure that some of the features you're used to having in other products are there and accessible. So VJ gave the example of how this year we added the ability to copy and paste those components. That's second nature to us now for those of us who have been using a computer for a long time. And so we wanted to make sure we were adding in that capability to our software. So there's going to be a handful of more of those basic usability type elements just to make it easier and more intuitive. The third piece is something that, in truth, I found buried in all of the conversations my teams are having with you as clients. Not everyone is screaming from the rooftops saying, hey, I'm struggling to maintain my content. But what we consistently hear time and time again is people concerned with how do I just make sure, like, it's a lot. My master deck library has 200 slides. How do I make sure they stay current and accurate and keep them updated? How do I make sure that they stay refreshed, right? I want the ability to make sure my content doesn't go stale in some way, shape, or form. And so we really wanted to look at what are some things that we can embed in the platform that would enable you to maintain your content a little bit easier, as well as how can we help? So thinking about what could VJ be doing in his role as a training expert with DigiDeck, how can he provide better service to you in educating you on the best practices for keeping that content current, or coming up with a consistent maintenance schedule. And so we're going to look for ways that we can help in that area as well this year. And the last piece is ultimately we recognize that you sign on for DigiDeck because you're hoping to get a return on it, right? You want the results, you want the control, you want the brand consistency, you want the brilliance of the visuals, you want the analytics, but in the end, you're using DigiDeck to serve a specific purpose, and we want to be able to fuel those results even better. And so we just have to look at whether it's the categories on here or the specific outputs that our system allows. Are we hitting the mark for you? And so we've got some thoughts on how we can do so even better in the future. So VJ, if you'll move forward, I'm just going to dive right into that first one on speed. We 1000% hear you that so much content in today's world is living within PowerPoint. It's living in some slide deck somewhere, whether that's in your marketing department in a series of folders, whether that's sitting on desktops of all of the salespeople who have created their own versions over the years. We've got a lot of people who are maintaining a ton of content internally versus externally in different places. And we simply want to make it easier to make that transition into DigiDeck. So in the beginning of the year, one of the first releases we are going to have is the ability to import a PowerPoint into DigiDeck. Now, it's not going to be an exact match from one-for-one match because our product is a little bit different than that one. But what we are configuring is the ability for DigiDeck to look at a PowerPoint file, to recognize then that this is a text box, and to then create the appropriate component from within DigiDeck and duplicate that into or move that into our platform so that you can then edit and enhance from there. So think of the speed of having 50 slides. You now no longer need to open a blank slide and duplicate, or grab a template and then add your content and do all the copy and pasting. You'll theoretically be able to put your PowerPoint in there. It will move over, it will create the slides, and then it will also add each of those components on the screen, allowing you the speed and efficiency of getting them all to exist. And then from there, it's really just the tweaks and enhancements to make that even better than it was before. So this one has been talked about for a very long time. I feel like maybe I'll pause here in case you guys have questions, but this is one of the things that gets me most excited about moving into next year, is simply just making this one step a little bit easier for you. Anybody have any thoughts or questions on that one?
We did have one question that came in from the chat from Chris.
Sure.
Thanks, Chris. Chris is asking, will it bring in any images too?
We are still configuring this particular component, but that is the expectation, is it's either going to do one of two things. It's either going to bring them directly onto the slide, or it's going to bring that image into our asset library so that you can select that image. So kind of auto import and tag. And so ideally, we're going to have it that last step. But we don't want to delay this one, and images are a big piece of it. And so ideally, we're just going to keep moving forward with it. So we'll get it out there. If it doesn't do it on the first iteration, it would be in the next release after that. But that is the intent.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
Any other questions on this one?
Awesome. The ability to import PowerPoints, just as an extra note, what that also has the ability to do for us is it's just really looking at better compatibility between the two products, which may even be able to enhance the PDF export capabilities that we have. So that's kind of a secondary piece. Some of you have asked about the ability to export to a PDF so that you can have something strong to leave behind for certain types of meetings or interactions. And that's another component that we expect to be in there. I didn't put it necessarily on the slide, but one capability often feeds the next from a technology standpoint on the back end. And so we're excited that we are very likely going to then have an improved PDF output as a result of us doing this work on the PowerPoint import.
And then one more question, Katie, for now.
Sure.
From Brock. Thanks, Brock. Will it preserve fonts?
So what it's going to do is it's going to be reading fonts from the brand kit or the standards that you've already put into DigiDeck. So if you're moving something over and it's labeled as a header, it needs to be reading what DigiDeck's brand controls. So not necessarily maintaining the ones from the previous deck, because our deck is built for how you want your brand represented moving forward. And so it'll be important to keep that branding standards and all of those fonts updated in DigiDeck.
Perfect. Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Brock.
No
Last
problem.
call for questions.
We
on
can
this
always
one?
go back to it, so
Yeah,
don't
of
worry about
course.
it. All right, next one. This is looking at usability enhancement. So I said we want to make it easier to use, and I know VJ covered a couple of these in 2025, but we're really just kind of taking another step forward in this step. So the idea is simply make it a little bit more intuitive and kind of we're going to maximize or capitalize on that sort of muscle movement we all have. So we're looking at expanding our capabilities for in-memory undo. That's been asked for a long time. So the ability for it to understand what was just done and to revert that. Obviously, we have the save and revert options that are up at the top of the screen when you are editing, but this will just make it a little bit easier to do so when you are on the fly in edit mode. Being able to do that quick Control Z is going to be powerful. So we're excited about that one. Another that we have been asked for is, while we have the grid and the layout ability, but asking things or getting things so that they will auto align when they get close to each other. Another feature that is common in other products. And I think that will simply just make things a little bit more efficient so that you can adjust text boxes so that they are aligned to each other. While the grids and the snap twos are there already, this is just going to be an enhancement off of that alignment capability. You mentioned graphs before, Baylor, but tables are another piece that have been, on the docket for a while. And, you've asked and we've listened, and we are going to prioritize that in the coming year to make sure that it is easier than ever to introduce a table on the screen to display data the way you want to be able to use it. And ideally, then we can start looking at not only the tables, but, number counters and some of these other components and how they can work together. So we're going to try and get real creative with it. But first and foremost, it's about ease and efficiency of adding a table, making sure data can be displayed properly. That last one is really just looking at, again, the screen layout. A lot of people have been mentioning, the edit versus layout, and you can do different things in each one of those views. And so we're just looking at what is the best way for us to make sure that all of those capabilities are readily available, intuitive, accessible when you need them. And so we're looking at some different user interface adjustments to make that easier than ever as well. So these ones, not necessarily as specific, they all feel really small when independent, but ultimately the goal here is to make it so that we are reducing the learning curve for you and reducing the learning curve for any of the users who are generating slide decks from DigiDeck. I'll pause again. Questions there? Seeing a couple of comments on the tables. Yes, they are huge for layout nerds. I am 1000% a layout nerd. I will take that. And the undo is just icing on the cake, I gotta tell you. All right. Sweet. All right, well, we can keep going. The last one that I mentioned, sorry, the third one that I mentioned in terms of those categories was content maintenance. And I meant what I said. This isn't necessarily at the top of everybody's list, but it's 1000% in every conversation. People are talking about how do I keep things more current than they are before? How do I stay organized and on top of all of this, especially as my master deck library grows? And that's what we want to see. We want to see you consistently thinking of new ways, new communications that you can deliver using DigiDeck. And so a few things that we're looking at adding are the ability to collaborate. So having, the option to comment, add things, you can even have approvals, things like that, so that while you are designing and there are multiple people in there, that you guys are able to sort of maintain some ability to communicate to each other as you're trying to do slide refinement. Organization has always been a huge piece. So we have had requests for things like asset tagging and the ability to put things into folders. And when I say things into folders, it could be images and assets from your library, could be presentations themselves. I'm using the example on the screen here of an archive, being able to say, hey, I've got a subset of presentations and I want them to be organized differently so that I can make it a little more intuitive to find what someone is looking for. All of those abilities are being factored in. And then the last piece here is let's show you some best practices on how to use all that. So while content maintenance is something that I think some of you are more used to than others, depending on who's really owning and maintaining the DigiDeck Master Deck library, it might not be in their wheelhouse to plan for a maintenance schedule or to understand how do I make sure I know who is the subject matter expert behind each of these slides and how do I contact them on a regular basis to make sure the content is current. This last piece here and looking at these best practices, the thing I'll mention is that when I was doing this analysis, the place this feedback was coming from most is actually the end users, right? If somebody is not adopting DigiDeck and they're not sending DigiDecks regularly, a lot of times their feedback is, well, because the slide wasn't accurate, they're not necessarily as well versed on how to make edits because their job is just to produce the decks. And so they aren't necessarily editing them. They're kind of reverting back to content that they feel more comfortable editing. So the usability enhancements paired with some strong content maintenance sort of best practices, I think are going to be huge for just making sure that everything stays fresh and current. So I'll pause
Katie,
there.
was one question from Chris. Thanks again, Chris. Will the folders be user specific or only for administrators?
At this point, we're talking more about at the org level. So when you log in and you see what it looks like, being able to divide things up into smaller increments. So I would say probably more at the org level than it would be at the user level. But I can definitely take that as feedback and see if there's anything else we could do there.
Another
Okay.
question from Nora regarding the tagging enhancements. Are you saying we will be able to organize videos and images in folders?
Yeah, that's the intent. Yes. So that's the request we've made to the dev team is that when we have a library of unstructured assets, can we make it easier than ever to find those? So in some case, like right now with tagging, you can search and you can locate those and it does isolate them, but ideally folders are a great way to get closer to what you want faster. So I think that'll be a good enhancement. Barbara, I'd love to hear a little bit more too about the need around user specificity or user specific folders. So if you don't mind speaking up, I'd just like to hear a little bit more about it.
I think our users just find it really difficult to locate their presentations, and I mean, I know I've told them, you just search for yourself and then all of your presentations come up, but they want to be able to store presentations in their folders for specific customers. They want to be able to put other content in there that are related to those customers and just have it all in one place.
I can definitely pass that along to our team. So it just helps to hear the context in which some of the requests come through. So I do really appreciate you giving me that extra little bit of color. But I'll make sure that gets passed along to the team as well. And VJ, if you're keep me honest here and make sure I follow through on that one.
For sure. And then Chris is also reinforcing the same thing Barb mentioned. So Barbara mentioned. And then Baylor asked, are you looking at auto tag features or ways to apply commonly used tags such as logo?
Yes. All right, Baylor, that is a great question and also a great segue into maybe where we're going to go from here. But yes, we're looking at a number of different ways to factor auto tagging in some way, shape, or form. A lot of organizations are also doing the same. We're currently trying to determine, is this something we want to engineer ourselves, or is this something that we can utilize the power of, say, AI to auto tag for us? So we're looking at both ways to do that. But that is definitely part of the development research we're doing. All right. I will have to check back on the Canva integration unless VJ, you have a better or a more updated answer. I haven't looked at that one in a little bit.
I will probably need to get back to you on that one too, Emily. We integrate with Canva, gosh, 4 years ago, and there has been some back and forth with them in terms of making improvements, but I'll be quite honest with you all, they are starting to view us as a little bit of a competitor. So they've been more reluctant to update our integration because they're now seeing us more as a competitor over and as time has kind of gone by. But I do know our team is still trying to connect with them and make sure that we get that integration as up to date as possible.
All right. The next little section here I have really looks about at taking this up a notch. So everything that I have shared right now has been coming direct from feedback that we have gotten from our clients. That's the mass priority that we are putting in place this year, is to say, hey, let's meet the needs. They've been asking for these things, and let's show up for them. This next piece is a little bit more of a look forward. So when I looked at those categories of what you guys are asking for, it's really about reducing the burden to create content, reducing the burden to maintain that content, and making it easier and easier to use. So reducing that learning curve. When I look at all of those components, what we're trying to do is sort of accept that we live in a world today, very much like when Google first came on the scene and now ChatGPT, where we want to type in the least amount of information possible and have something happen, right? This example here, build me a new slide about 2026 sponsorship opportunities. My mind breaks because I go, okay, that would be amazing, right? If I could type in one sentence and Digideck would produce something. And in truth, this is possible. So we are going to talk a little bit now about maybe that next big leap forward Digideck is making into the AI space. And we also sort of want to recognize that we're doing so cautiously and with intention. I think a lot of people sort of jumped on the AI bandwagon, and we were pretty, reserved in how we approach this because we just want to make sure we're doing it right. We're doing it for a reason, that there is intention behind it, and that we're filling a need that no one else is filling. So VJ, why don't you move forward and I'll tell them a little bit more about what I mean there. If any of you have ever typed in a prompt like the one I just showed into ChatGPT, you know the types of output you get. What you tend to see is it struggles to apply your brand. It's going to struggle to create anything that isn't fairly generic. And the big piece that I always struggled with is it just generates it one time, right? It's not editable in many ways. A lot of the image generation or any of the visual generation that AI does today, it is generating it one time. And as soon as I want to edit it, so I ask for a step 2, okay, now make the background purple, it starts from scratch. And so then my next output is different from my first output. So it's changing more than just that one thing I asked of it, because essentially AI is producing it from scratch each and every time. So those things have made it so that AI has not necessarily steamrolled ahead quite as far in the visual design space as it has in others, because it hasn't found that sweet spot of being able to have the control of brand, editability, and then really being able to create something that's unique. Tying into that, then you look at, okay, if I'm having it create an entire deck, can AI effectively tell a story that has a strong narrative from end to end? Does it know the right content to be putting on the screen in the first place? And does it know what's happening in real life, the context around it? Most AI tools today don't have those elements built into them. Even the AI-enabled products that are kind of closer to our space, that are able to generate content, they're missing these other pieces where we're saying, all right, now tie the story, not just have it do something or build something that we think is sort of a pretty visual. So if you want to move forward, VJ, we'll talk a little bit about maybe what we're trying to do that's different than everyone else. Speed is the top priority when it comes to AI, and we're going to maintain that. We want there to be a way for us to build faster. So rapid creation has to be there. But DigiDeck was founded on the idea of this element of control. Can I maintain consistent brand representation in all of those decks? That is sort of the sweet spot for us. And so we are trying to figure out, how do we make AI, which can be chaotic and unpredictable, how do we give it better, firmer rules so that we maintain the control that we've always had? AI also today is typically an individual conversation that you are having. And so, excuse me, that ability to collaborate with multiple people is something we would like to add in. And so we're factoring in the collaboration tools we want to build in 2026, and then trying to tie that into then how do I still use AI so that the two things can work together and that we can build this so that teams can scale it together as opposed to individuals. And then the last two pieces should be that icing on the cake, context-aware visual brilliance. So visual brilliance means what you produce in DigiDeck should be as good or better than it always was. So the ability to still maintain the layouts and the use of all of your brand representation, your images, etc. But the context-aware piece is really, really important, because we're trying to figure out, how do we just make DigiDeck smarter? How do we give it intelligence that'll help it generate slides that really do hit the mark for you? So I'll show you a little bit about what that can look like here in just a second. So I'm going to give you just a quick walkthrough of some really basic examples, and I promise you these are mock-ups. These are not the final UI, but I didn't want to, I'm a bigger fan of show than tell. So what VJ can do as he just clicks through these is show, as we want to create a slide with AI, you can have that option. And what it's going to do is it's going to allow you to interact. So you can give it information about what you want to build on that slide. So this one is a pretty simple prompt that says, create a slide to promote our game sponsorship opportunity with Minnesota Oncology. We hit generate slide. What it's going to do is it's going to look at your master deck library. It's going to look and see if there's any slides that actually already meet this need, but it's also going to look at the styling and the templates that are used. It's going to select one that makes the most sense, and it's going to ensure that the copy put onto the slide is pulling from the context of information that's contained within that deck or in the prompt. And it's going to make sure that the voice and the messaging is consistent with everything else that's in your master deck library. So when you click that final piece, then you get a slide that is using on-brand imagery, is using all of the brands or the fonts, colors, and styles that you have input into your DigiDeck, and can incorporate things like logos and everything else. But notice you've got that little chat bar on the side there. You'd be able to then continue by making edits. Okay, well, I want that header to be something else, or can we find a different image for this? Imagine being able to make those edits. Now, your users who aren't familiar with the UI, but can sure dish out orders, they still have the ability to move forward and get those designs sort of fine-tuned. And if you advance one more, then I can show you one that maybe is a step even bigger, how to create a presentation overall. So from this example here, go ahead and click Create Presentation. You can go ahead and start a new one. You'll get another option here to generate a presentation outline. This is also another difference with other ChatGPT products. What we're trying to do here is give it a guided experience. This is very human in the loop. We don't necessarily want it to just create something random from scratch or from a handful of words. So instead, we're generating the outline first so that you can give it the proper guidance to build you something valuable. So when you click Generate Presentation Outline, and you go ahead and give it some information, so go ahead and click Forward. So you can, this one in this case, we're giving it kind of an order of operations. Here's the things we want covered in this particular presentation. And then when we move forward to generate that, it produces a deck. And the important thing here is you are still maximizing the value of your master deck library. So if you have a slide that satisfies the need that you asked for, it's going to pull in those relevant slides. So you can see that some of those are slides that are already pre-designed. You're going to have others that are indicated as this is new. This has never existed before because it did not find any content within your master deck library that satisfied that particular topic. And it's going to make a recommendation on what to include there. And again, very contextual based off of everything that is already in there. And the great part is you've got this outline you can walk through, but you can make edits. You can go and directly type in there, replace those bullets. You can move the order up and down by dragging those up and down. You have the ability to sort of influence it before you even hit the go button. So again, with AI products today, a lot of times it's a quick prompt, generates draft one, then you've got to wait. You've got to look at it all, you give it some feedback and it generates an entirely another version. This is one you can kind of help edit along the way. The idea here would be to get you to that 80-90% of the way there, and then you click generate. And when you generate the deck, now think back to the slides I just showed you where you have the little chat bar on the side. Now you have the ability to continue to edit. So it's created that entire deck, all the new slides are there, but you can go slide by slide and you can say, oh, replace this one on this particular slide, and you can continue to do that refinement process, but with some speed and efficiency tied to it. This is a lot. I 100% appreciate that. So I'll pause and I'll take a peek at the chat questions, but feel free to just raise your hand or pipe up and we'll see what you guys' initial reactions are. And I'll try do my best to answer any questions you have. So I'm going to open up that chat quick.
Yeah, I can read off the first one
Thank you.
from Michael. Michael asked, will this be via Chat GPT, Gemini, Copilot, etc.? Who's the AI vendor behind that?
Sure. Right now, our plan is we're using the ChatGPT backbone, but the product itself or the interface you're going to be using is native to Digideck, so it'll be built right within the platform. So the idea is you never have to leave. You simply have sort of an assistant that is built right into the deck itself, but the backbone right now is ChatGPT. Any other questions? Are we excited? Are we nervous? All right. I will give you one more sneak peek a little bit forward here. We don't want to stop at just giving you something that's going to be a productivity tool. We really want to take this to the next level. And so also in 2026, what we're looking at doing is thinking bigger. So the presentation agent that is built within Digideck is really that productivity tool. It's the way to make things move faster and to help you guys generate without necessarily having to do all the points and clicks, rapid customization, all of the things I just showed you. What we also want to be able to do is imagine if Digideck knew everything your intranet knew about your business, or everything your website knew about your business, or if it had access to your entire marketing catalog or your entire product catalog. What we're trying to do with our beta clients here in the beginning of the year is that we are testing the ability to plug Digideck in using a knowledge-based connector to a repository of information. So imagine tomorrow if instead of saying, hey, build me a presentation about blank, you could go build me a presentation about last week's call with Visa, right? Being able to reference actual contextual information. So we have clients who are testing with us the building of a knowledge base that has information like their product catalogs, their sales methodologies, but also things like call transcripts so that you can pull in the most contextual information possible and generate follow-up decks after a call or things that maybe have a little bit more of that customization. Digideck has historically been about creating presentations that kind of fit in that 80-20 rule, right? 80% of it is the same every time, and that 20% we customize. We're making it more efficient to do that, but then we're looking at what about those decks that are a little bit more custom end to end? What if it's 80% custom? Great. If you connect it to the right knowledge, Digideck should have the ability to generate slides in a logical order, pulling in relevant contextual data, and then putting that on the screen, ready to go so that you can go edit and refine from there. So that's kind of that last step. We're testing, like I said, in the beginning of the year here, with the hopes that in 2026 we will have a generally available option to plug this in to your knowledge. So big exciting times here. I will turn it back over to VJ to facilitate any remaining questions here, but we are excited. And if we missed anything, if there's something you were hoping we were going to be working on, please let me know, because that is truly our focus for the year to come.
That was awesome. Thanks, Katie. Really appreciate the presentation. We had one question that came in back to the creating a slide with AI. So when a slide is created with AI, does it pull from content like a disclosure in an expandable panel? I can maybe help answer that one because I know it's related to Sun Life. So Nora, yes, I think so long as in the prompt, right, the salesperson would put in the prompt to include your disclosure information, and then therefore would pull it. Do you know the create slide with AI does pull interactive content if that's the kind of general concern? And then you can be super specific about which type of content you want it to pull in as well.
I think the thing to note here about the AI and how we're building it, so the ability for us to maintain brand control and visual design on the screen is because we are sort of capitalizing on the slide templates and the master deck library that's already been built. So instead of creating something that has never existed, right, net new, what it's doing is it's looking at the information that you are asking it to do, it's putting it into a usable format, right? So either paragraphs or bullets or clickable items, and then it's choosing a template that suits the type of information being shared. So even things where there's hidden content and you have to click on something and then it flips and then it shows you whatever is behind that, it's still able to choose that, but it's based upon the content. It's going to look at the library of templates that you have in your master deck library, or the templates or layouts that are available that have been custom built for yours. So it's looking at all of those options and it's just selecting the best option. And if you don't like the option, the great part is you can tell AI you don't like it and it can try again. And you can give it more direction about what to build from there. So it isn't building and designing from scratch. We're not replacing designers in general. We're saying we feed it with structure and it chooses the best one to produce and then is able to move forward that way. And then you guys have the ability to refine at the end.
And sort of on that same topic, we had a question from Brock at Forever Lawn. Will there be an ability to govern or review the AI slide creation by users at an administrative level first?
So interestingly enough, in the spirit of that content management piece, that is 100% on the roadmap. I'm not exactly sure which release it will be, probably not release 1. But what we are asking for the ability to do is say, if net new slides have been built in a index, can we isolate those in some way so that an admin of some sort can promote those into the master deck library, so that when there is something built that really is valuable and could help others, that we have the ability to move it into that master deck library and make it part of something in the repeatable in the larger library, as opposed to the things that are truly custom for one-off decks. So yes, that is on the roadmap, just not exactly sure exactly which release it would be.
Thanks, Brock. Thanks, Katie. Another question from Bridget, and that is, will the AI tool take the iteration and feedback as learnings moving forward? Wondering if it'll get better at knowing what we want as we use it more.
So all AI learns to some degree, and what the development team is working on doing is figuring out the right amount of fine tuning, because what we don't want to lose is brand control, which is the initial set of sort of rules and guides that we give the AI. And so we're trying to, that's actually what we're doing throughout our alpha and beta phase with the clients that we have testing, is we're trying to make sure we're putting the right amount of guardrails so that it gets some flex, it can learn and move, but it doesn't learn so much that essentially it creates a new set of rules for itself, which if you spent any time using AI products, they often can, right? They can sort of morph into something that it can be difficult to get it back in line. So what we're trying to do is say, what are the parameters that we need to give it that are the appropriate amount of flex and room to learn, but that it maintains the control that you guys expect to have over your brand, your messaging, etc. So yes, learning is possible, but we are trying to test the parameters of how much learning it can do so that we can keep that going. I will be perfectly honest, the people on this call are some of the very first. I mean, there are probably less than 10 people that use Digideck that have even heard that this is coming. So please know you are definitely on the front end of awareness that this is the direction that we are going with our product. And we are more than happy to take your feedback, thoughts, or interests. So as you guys close out of this session, feel free to contact us or contact your CSM and say, hey, I heard about this and here's some thoughts I have or questions. Myself, VJ, and some of our other CSMs, like we are available to hop on calls, provide more detail, or to talk about a specific use case you might be interested in exploring down the road. So be excited because this is definitely some new territory for us, but we believe this to be the right evolution for our product.
Awesome. Thanks, Katie. Last call for questions. Any other questions before we wrap things up here? As you may be thinking of your last minute questions, as Katie mentioned, please, if you have feedback for us or want to jump on a call with your CSM or Katie and myself and want to dive into these pieces more, please let us know. Raise your hand and we're happy to connect.
Hey, BJ, some of those components you talked about that came on earlier this year,
yes,
I don't seem to have those. I don't seem to have the right. I've got the thing on the left that lets me easily add components and stuff like that, but I don't have the one on the right that lets me kind of edit them within the layout
style.
So I
don't. That's where I'll connect with Laura, your CSM, and we'll get you all scheduled to get your platform updated to the newest version.
Thank you.
Yep. And Ariana, you bet. Everybody that attended or registered, I should say, will be receiving a recording. So you can expect to receive that via email.
Wonderful.
Awesome. Well, thanks for taking some time out of your Wednesday to join us and learn a bit more about this year and next year. Again, you can expect to receive this recording at some point later on this afternoon or this week. And raise your hand if you want to learn more about some of our features or if you have additional questions.